Hello everybody, we're at lesson 2 of Braille in an hour, hopefully. Lesson 2 is alphabetic word signs and basic punctuation. So, from our previous lesson you remember that we learned the Braille alphabet. If those letters are standing by themselves in a line of Braille, then they represent a whole entire word. There is a really basic rule that that letter has to stand alone. So let's go through them real quick and then we'll go through the rules about them. So if you ever see the letter B in a line of Braille, and the letter B is dots, remember from our previous lesson, is dots 1 and 2. If you see a B, as in boy, by itself, it stands for the word but, B-U-T. Next we have C, which is dots 1 and 4, and C by itself is the word can. Next, we have D, and the letter D, remember, is dots 1, 4, 5, and D by itself is the word do. E, dots 1 and 5, by itself is the word every, E-V-E-R-Y. Next in our alphabetic word signs is the letter F. If we remember from previous, dots 1, 2, and 4. F by itself stands for the word from, F-R-O-M. Next we have G, dots 1, 2, 4, 5, and that means the word go by itself. Next we have the letter H, dots 1, 2, 5, and H by itself is the word have, H-A-V-E. Next, we have the letter J, which is dots 2, 4, 5, and J by itself represents the word just, J-U-S-T. Next, we have the letter K, which was dots 1 and 3, and K by itself is the word knowledge, N-O-W-L-E-D-G-E, knowledge. The next letter and word sign we have is the letter L, and L by itself is the word like. Remember, L is dots 1, 2, and 3. Next, we have the letter M by itself, dots 1, 3, and 4. Would represent the word more, M-O-R-E. Next, we have the letter N, which is dots 1, 3, 4, 5, and N by itself represents the word not, N-O-T. Next, we have the letter P, which is dots 1, 2, 3, 4, and P by itself is the word people, P-E-O-P-E-L-E. Next, we have the letter Q, which is dots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Q by itself is the word quite, Q-U-I-T-E. Next, we have the letter R, and R is dots 1, 2, 3, 5, and R by itself represents the word rather, R-A-T-H-E-R. Next, we have the letter S, which is dots 2, 3, 4, and S by itself is the word so, S-O. Next, we have the letter T, which is dots 2, 3, 4, 5, and a T by itself in a line of Braille represents the word that, T-H-A-T. Next, we have the letter U, which is dots 1, 3, 6, and the letter U represents the word us, and that is not United States, it's the word us, U-S. Next letter we have is the letter V, which is dots 1, 2, 3, 6, and a V by itself is the word very, V-E-R-Y. Next, we have the letter W, which is dot 2, 4, 5, 6, and a W by itself means will, W-I-L-L. And next we have the letter X, which is dots 1, 3, 4, 6, and X is kind of unique in that it represents a word, and it doesn't start with the word, but that word is it. So an X by itself represents the word it, I-T. Next we have the letter Y, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that represents the word you, Y-O-U. And last but not least, we have the letter Z, which is dots 1, 3, 5, 6, and a Z by itself. Once again, like X, it doesn't start with that letter. It represents the word as, A-Z. Or excuse me, A-S. Z represents the word as, spelled A-S. So, let's go over a couple of the rules. You may have noticed that there is no alphabetic word sign for the letters A, I, or O, and that's because we use the word a lot, as in like a apple or a person. So we couldn't use that. The other one is I, such as the personal pronoun, and O as well. I don't know why, but there just isn't. So, alphabetic word signs can be used adjacent to punctuation and indicators, which is a rule, and we'll get into what indicators are in a subsequent lesson. But the main thing to remember about alphabetic word signs and their rule is they must stand alone. So, for example, you could not stick two alphabetic word signs together to make a word, such as my example is the word cannot. So you could not take the alphabetic word sign for C and N and make the word cannot, because C by itself would be can, N by itself would be not, but you can't put them together because that would be violating the basic rule of alphabetic word signs. So moving on, next we have punctuation. So just like in print, we have punctuation in Braille, and it has to be represented in Braille cells. So our first punctuation symbol, if you ever see it in Braille, would be the dot 2, which represents a comma. Okay. Next one is we have dots 2, 3, and 5, which is an exclamation point. You may also hear this described as a drop F because it kind of looks like an F, right? But it's in the lower portion of the Braille cell, so you may hear that term. Next, we have dots 2, 5, and 6, which kind of looks like a drop D, like we just discussed. But that is dots 2, 5, 6 is a period, so we're going to be using that one a lot. Next, we have dots 2, 3, 6 is a question mark. Okay. And next we're going to get into one of those indicators, and it's probably the one that you're going to use quite often. So if you want to make a letter in Braille a capital, you need to put an indicator in front of it, a symbol that will tell the reader that the letter following it is capitalized. So how do you do that? Dot 6. If you ever see a dot 6 by itself, that means that the next letter that immediately precedes it is capitalized. So another indicator that we have, let's say we want to capitalize an entire word. So if you want to capitalize an entire word, you would put 2 dot 6s in a row and then the word. That would mean every letter in that subsequent word is capitalized. And then let's say you want to capitalize an entire sentence, like you want to shout at someone in print. So that is indicated, we call it a capital pass-through, and that's 3 dot 6s in a row. So if you see 3 dot 6s in a row, that means the entire rest of the whole Braille is all capitalized, unless we stop it. So we have a capital termination sign, which here is dot 3, 6 together. That tells you that, hey, stop capitalizing everything. So that is basic, that is the alphabetic word sign and basic punctuation. Stand by for lesson number 3.